Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Fond Pond, the Fondcast. Friends occasionally not disagreeing. We're headed back here with Cody, Justin, and Brett for part 2 of our analysis of the Bennington Triangle, where at least 5 people have gone missing in a relatively short span of time. Today, we're going to offer you our theories for each of the cases, break down the details on each of them, and say what we believe may have caused each of these people's disappearances. Stay tuned as we wrap up the Bennington Triangle on Friends Occasionally Not Disagreeing.
I think we're about ready to probably talk about this as a whole. I would say.
Yeah, I don't have any other further. Well, I do have a couple things that I might mention in a bit, but
Okay.
I was gonna say, do you want to do theories, or do you want to I don't know, because I was when I was making my notes, I made like a big list of the theories, but then also kind of like broke down for each of the disappearances, like what might have happened.
Okay.
So I don't know which way is better to go about it. You want to do theories?
We can do that. Sure. Just start from the top of the major ones, because I mean, there's so little to go on for some of those side cases that is I'm not sure what we can really say.
I mean, why don't you throw one out there and talk about it, and maybe we can rotate around or something.
Yeah, that works.
Okay, well, Carl Herrick, rather, the one who always gets glossed over. He the one who was squeezed to death by forces unknown. I think this is probably one of the more mysterious ones because a wild animal probably isn't going to do that. So let's talk a bit about that one. What do you think happened to him? Because I mean, apparently we're more curious about this than the locals were back then.
Yeah.
I mean, man-eating stone decided they wanted to spit him out or something. Do you think it was the Bennington monster, this huge, hairy beast that knocked over a stagecoach and then didn't do much for 100 years?
This one, I mean, you could come up with a very mundane theory for those, and depending on exactly what, because I don't know, I don't have the autopsy report right in front of me, how extensive was the injuries, because you could very easily say that he fell and fell on a stone and broke a rib, and the rib punctured his lung, and there he's done for. That certainly seems very plausible, but that would be a single rib or maybe two, and you wouldn't look at that. I wouldn't think a doctor would look at that and say, "Oh, he was crushed to death." But maybe in the 40s that's the way they did things. I don't know. But beyond that mundane theory, I honestly don't know. That's it. The report of the footprints makes it very fun to speculate things, but there's just the problem with a lot of these, basically all of them, is that there's very little evidence to actually look at and try to piece anything together with.
Yeah. Most of what we have is just the accounts of the people who were there, who claim to have seen what they saw, and that sort of thing doesn't hold up in court, let's just say, because you need more than just hearsay to really validate something like this. If the coroner had taken photos of that, I mean, I know photography wasn't as common back in 43 as even 40 years later, say, but for a case this weird, do you think they might have documented it somehow other than just a written report or the words of locals about it?
That's a great point, because we're not talking about the 1840s and 50s here. It's 1940s and 50s. There should be. I must be wrong. I thought I saw a picture of the last lady's body someplace, but I tried to find it again. I couldn't find it, so I must be wrong on that. This one for me is I went through each of these myself afterwards and tried to put a label of what I think it might have been. This is really the one that I put no explanation by, because I just don't know what fits all of those pieces. The fall, Brett said the fall, that's what I was thinking, most likely for crushed lungs and ribs. That's all I could really think of. I mean, I don't know, but the fun way to look at this one, I guess, is with those footprints, and that would definitely bring into like the Bigfoot theories, I guess. And I don't know if did either of you bump into the Manitou or the Wendigo theories on any of this? Those were mentioned on something I looked at.
I mean, I've run into Wendigo theories on other disappearances out in the wild. I don't think I'd seen any mentioned specifically regarding the Bennington Triangle though. But so if you want to go elaborate, go for it.
I mean, the Bigfoot is just the Bigfoot, like large creature could tip over the stagecoach, could crush a guy supposedly. But the Native American lore they were kind of going to a little bit more on this was the Manitou, which I've seen listed a few places. I think it's in an episode of the X-Files, if I'm not mistaken. It might have been that creature in the X-Files episode of that, like, had the, in their version at least, it had the capacity to take someone's ailments off of them, but give it to itself. I think that was a Manitou, if I'm not mistaken. But they were talking about the twisted version of the Manitou in this legend that I was looking up, which was how Wendigos were formed, apparently, according to the version I was reading here, which was the more, violent, malicious type of creature instead, which would both fit sort of the Native American lore a little bit more and still be a large creature that potentially could knock over a stagecoach or crush somebody. So it's just kind of a fun explanation, if you will, not for those, not for old Herrick, but for everybody else here. It's kind of a fun explanation for what might have happened on this one.
Yeah, and if his body had been found like pinned under something, that would. Well, I mean, that's also a possibility. Maybe he had the bad luck of having a tree fall on him and that crushed his ribs, and the footprints around him might have been an animal that dragged him out and was looking to eat him or something, and maybe got scared off by something else, or maybe the search party was nearby and it ran from them. A bear does have large feet. It couldn't have crushed him to death, but maybe it was sniffing around him during the 3 days he was missing, and that could account for the footprints.
Seems plausible.
So, again, but this is all speculation because most of these cases just have a few bullet points to go on and then not a whole lot else. So it does seem more plausible to me that he fell or had something fall on him, which crushed, his ribs into his lungs, killed him pretty quickly, and something dragged him away from whatever area where he died and left him in the spot where they found him. That's my best guess at this. But again, it's just a guess.
Let's just do these chronologically then. Let's go to Old Mitty Rivers then.
Okay.
What do you make on this one?
Well, Mitty, like several others, he was experienced. He knew the area. He shouldn't have gotten lost. He was with people that should have been able to keep an eye on him. But we don't have any details of the exact, like the spot where they lost sight of him. We don't know if it was along a ravine. We don't know if there was any sort of, there wasn't mention of a river or anything aside from where the shell was found. But we don't know if there was hazardous terrain that maybe. I'm just going to cut to the chase. The guy was 74. People fall when they're 74. They break ribs. Or break hips rather. So his hip could have given out. He could have fallen, hit his head. If there was an embankment, he could have rolled to where they couldn't see him. I honestly think this one, his leg, his hip, something gave out on him while he pushed on ahead, and he tragically just fell out of sight, and no one was able to find him, or he was already dead before he could call out for help. Maybe he hit his head on a rock or something. But I think there is a very plausible explanation for this. The shell casing that was found a ways off near the stream, I don't quite know the geography well enough to say how that might have ended up there. But yeah, his actual disappearance, I just think natural causes, and they just never found him because woods are a lot harder to search than you might expect.
One thing that came up in some of the conversations that I saw was the idea that, since it's a mountainous area, and it's not like the Rocky Mountains where it's all stone and jagged peaks. It's a very tree covered kind of low rise mountain. But still there are reportedly, caves in the area, breaks in the ground. Like some of that's like mine shafts, but I don't know that there's like actual mines in the area. But it was suspected
wells or something maybe.
Yeah, things that he could have fallen into that were like overgrown or somewhat covered up, and like he's fell into a deep hole somewhere, and you're not going to like search that necessarily if you can even see it during a search. So something like that seems pretty plausible for this one. Again, like you say, he's elderly, even though he's experienced. I mean, I'm 42 and I'm already losing dexterity where I could easily trip over something and fall into a hole. So it seems very plausible. Like you say, it just some freak accident, and he just fell somewhere that just wasn't able to be found.
This one is, why this podcast is so fun for me tonight is because there's like all these little mini mysteries. So it's like trying to figure out what happened to each of these people as they went through this. If he wasn't so old, this would be maybe, again, the most intriguing one, because this guy is not only familiar with the land, but he was a hunting guide, for crying out loud. Like, if anybody on this list shouldn't have gotten lost, it should have been this guy.
Right. Yeah.
And this is just interesting. So I happen to also have watched, I didn't mention yet, but I watched the episode of Weird or What that this Bennington Triangle was featured on, hosted by Bill Shatner.
I watched that as well.
Did you? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So they brought up another thing in there that we haven't mentioned yet, which is mountain lions. And the guy they mentioned that they interviewed in that essentially said a mountain lion strong enough to like pick up a 200-pound man and like climb the tree with it, like in its mouth or whatever. So like this, for a couple of these cases, potentially, and there are a lot of mountain lions in this area, they said, if you're looking for a guy on the ground, then he wasn't there because he could have been either up in the tree with a mountain lion, or the mountain lion could have like dragged him to like a cave or something that they lived in at the place, So that's possible, I guess, and would disappear, the people that you're looking for, if that's how you want to think about that. Another one that we mentioned, I think, in the onset of the podcast tonight, but haven't really brought back up since, is there's a long-standing history of like odd lights and sounds. We mentioned at the beginning of this, the strange lights and strange sounds, which people have been drawn to supposedly through legend. So a couple of these people that kind of wandered off on their own, I don't know what those are, but maybe he was a curious guy and he went to chase one of these orbs in the forest, and then who knows, might have fell or might have had whatever happened to him at the time. But there's
still a
those
fun
two.
theory.
What's that?
Definitely a fun theory to just speculate about.
Or just a Hungry Rock idea.
Yeah, that still boggles my mind.
Gelatinous cube theory.
Let's see, if he had just turned into a snake, he would have been able to get out.
Right? All right. Who's next?
So that would be Paula Weldon, I believe.
Oh, Paula.
So again, I would like to say that one of the theories that people have thrown out about all of these cases is that it was a serial killer, being that it was a relatively short time frame and localized to this area. And this is something I don't think we've mentioned so far. But with a young woman going missing, that could also be a target for a serial killer. The problem with that theory, though, is that serial killers usually have a type, a type of target they go after, women or children or people of a certain age or status or something like that. But these people are like anywhere from 8 years old to 74. So while it's the most mundane of the official explanations, I don't think one unidentified serial killer is responsible for all of this. But I just wanted to put that out there because we hadn't really talked about it yet. So,
yeah.
So on that note, what do you think happened to Paula Weldon, the college girl who disappeared going on a long walk?
I just put murder for this one. I don't know exactly how or why, if it's this lumberjack guy that I was talking about. Actually, he did know where she was buried, or she bumped into somebody else. I don't know. It just seems like she was there and then she wasn't. I guess that's one of the weird things about this one, though, too, is like if there were people hiking 100 yards behind, which is, I mean, it's not real close, but it's also seeable.
Mhm.
So
Terrible as well.
yeah,
Right.
so that is weird. I mean, so how did she get off the track? Again, you could do a few of these. You could do maybe like the lights in the mountains. You could look at that as an option, I guess. I don't know, like all the creatures and all the animals you think would make noise.
Mhm.
Oh, mountain lions are, to the best of my knowledge, at least ambush predators. So they can follow along relatively quietly if they're stalking someone or something. And I gather they strike fast and try to basically take their prey down without any struggle, like usually around the neck, and then they drag them off to either a tree or their homes or whatever. So it's not outside the realm of possibility that a mountain lion could follow along with someone until they were, isolated, and then strike, drag them off. You think there would be blood? I do admit that, but it is plausible that an isolated hiker could get attacked and dragged off before anyone, even a football field away, would have a chance to notice. So,
Hungry Rock, going Hungry Rock on this one.
I do admit this one's a little harder to pin down, especially if you factor in the waitress in Massachusetts who's claimed that she served someone matching her description.
Hmm.
Um, if that is true, my guess is she she went off to try and find a new life for herself.
Yeah.
Like I don't know for a fact that she was dissatisfied with anything in her life, but I know, according to part of my research, she was working two shifts to make money at college. Maybe she was tired of that. And maybe she wanted to be free of that kind of responsibility and just went off to try and find herself. My guess on this one is that she didn't actually die out there. She just left and tried to find a new life.
Hmm.
Any thoughts on that one, Brett? Or because I think you and I did most of the talking on that, didn't we, Cody?
Yeah. I would probably lean towards. I mean, there definitely was. That one guy was very suspicious. If any of these feel like a straight up murder, it's this one. Um, it, there's a lot about this because this is the one where there were other potential sightings of her afterwards. Like the waitress who says she served food to someone matching the description. I think there was another one as well where someone said a young woman matching that description was at another diner or something with an older man who was like verbally abusive, and so potentially like she ran off with him or like he took her or something like that.
Hmm.
I guess if I'm going with an honest possibility here, it's probably just murder. But how she got off the trail in front of those people, that I don't have an explanation for, other than like just because it's a trail doesn't mean you stay on the trail necessarily.
Right. Yeah.
It's most people. I mean, I'm not going to go wandering off in the middle of the woods, not because I'm like fearful of doing that, but just because it's a nice trail to walk on. Why would you want to go tripping over fallen logs and through
Yeah.
like thick weeds and things that are like scraping off and like leaving stuff on your clothes when you can just walk on a nice trail? So
Unless something like really caught your eye. I mean, I could see that maybe you wanted a closer
Yeah.
look, but yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, the part about her disappearing from other people walking on the trail in front of her is really weird.
Mhm.
But
Especially because she was one of the ones wearing a red coat, I think, and red would tend to stand out in that kind
yeah,
of environment.
yeah, very true. So, I mean, I guess I would just say that she wandered off the trail and then later got murderized. That's
Okay.
where I'm going.
Murderized.
And so far, aside from Cody's magic man-eating carnivorous rock theory on this one, we seem to all be gravitating towards the mundane explanations for these, which is interesting. Okay, and I do believe that brings us to Mr. Tedford, the man on and off the bus, who we now have seen newspaper evidence conveying a testimony from the driver that he got off the bus. So I
That's an
think he got off the
interesting
bus,
one, right?
guys.
I mean, this is a really interesting case purely for the aspect of we've done, I don't know, a half dozen of these podcasts on similar-ish supernatural true crime type topics, and we never seem to find like that piece of evidence where it's like, where did this rumor start from, or is this how this actually happened? And if that newspaper clipping is accurate, then it's like, well, because nothing else I looked at besides this one Reddit page, which had the links to those, had anything about like this being the case. You know what I mean? Everything was like, this guy disappeared on the bus ride.
Interesting.
So,
And then there was the thing I found about the time gap where, that that adds that other layer of memory fog to everything.
well, even, I did check that too. So the first newspaper clipping that I put up was still like 15 days afterwards, I think. So does that mean they interviewed the bus driver 15 days later? Or they reported it 15 days later? Because that's a big difference as well.
That's a good point. Yeah, and without clarification on that does muddy the waters even further. So, but yeah, I firmly believe guy just got off the bus. For whatever reason, we can speculate on that, but I think we have some evidence saying he did get off. Even if that newspaper clipping weren't there, the thing I found about the time gap, that leads me to question the accuracy of the testimony of the passengers who they had to track down a week to 2 weeks later and say, hey, do you remember this guy? And then they have to rack their brains to see if they did. It just seems like there's a lot of room for gaps there. Like I didn't notice the guy in an army jacket get off the bus. Doesn't mean he didn't get off the bus,
Well,
So,
yeah.
I really wanted to pin this on a bus cult, but because I was saying, what's going on here is all these people are in on it. They just prowl around in a bus waiting for some unsuspecting guy to get on,
picking up dudes middle of the night.
and he's never seen again. But this clipping that a guy matching that description got off on a bus. Now, one thing that just occurred to me here in reading this again, is that the same bus? What if he gets off a bus? He's, as all accounts seem to say, he's, maybe not all there anymore. What if he gets on a different bus and then gets off this other bus where he's not supposed to be? What if that, because it just says a bus driver told state police that a man answering Tedford's description got off his bus in Brandon. I mean, not to say that it couldn't be the same bus, but it seems to be there's a possibility that it is. If it gets off if it's a bus stop, maybe there's two buses. It just happens to be there at the same time.
Interesting.
He gets on the wrong one.
It's possible, and we established normally, like on a regular trip, this takes 8 hours, and the weather delayed it beyond that. So you'd think they'd have to stop and let people use the facilities. So maybe he did get back on the wrong bus after he stopped for a pit stop. That would explain maybe why he left all his stuff on that bus, and he himself got on a different one and ended up someplace else. And by the time he realized he was on the wrong bus, they'd already parted ways, possibly. I mean, it seems possible, but without seeing the bus schedules from 1949,
Get on
that.
Before I found the newspaper clipping, this was, like I said, definitely the one that intrigued me the most, because I feel like you could bring in on this one, like even UFOs of like the guy disappeared. I don't know where in the bus he was either, if he was at the back of the bus or, because that's different too. If you got a guy in the back of the bus, no one's watching him, and then where'd the guy go? Or if he's in the middle of the bus, then you theoretically would have had people staring at him the whole bus ride. But so that's kind of intriguing, like the old beam up to the UFO. This one also was in that Shatner documentary where they interviewed a guy who was both credible and batshit crazy, that talked about the wormholes that he suspected were used here in this bus.
Yep. Oh no.
This was a dude with a degree, Justin, I promise. But
move over electric vehicles.
He brought up the old infamous Philadelphia experiment in the episode, which I was like, that's a fun one to look at too. But he is convinced that these are possible on a small level, and his theory was a guy could disappear off this bus and turn up virtually anywhere in the universe, depending on where the other end of the wormhole is.
Quantum tunneling doesn't work that way, though.
Oh, it does. He has a degree. He made it very clear, because he talked about the ship going from Philadelphia to where to go, Charleston or something like that. I don't remember.
Something like that. I think this guy might have been a regular at the store where I used to work, based on what you're relaying.
So I don't know if that's the case. It doesn't really make a lot of sense, but it is pretty fun to think about that one. So
yeah, that's fair.
Wormholes.
Is that your official verdict on this one?
If I believe the newspaper clippings, then I think the guy just walked off and went someplace they never found him. If I'm not to believe the newspaper clippings, man, that's such a fascinating case. Then I'm gonna go UFOs if that's not the case.
Okay.
No, then they would have had like a beam of light or something, right? Have you ever heard of a UFO story that doesn't have a beam of light when people get abducted? Maybe it is wormholes. Shit, I don't know.
Maybe the UFOs used wormholes to get him on their ship.
Maybe he thought it was odd that when he got on the bus, everyone else had a seat, but for him there was just a rock.
Oh man, that enchanted rock is going places.
Wasn't
it
even
did say it moved around.
Yeah, if it can move around the mountain, why can't it get a bus ticket?
Wasn't even a bus. It was a rock shaped like a bus.
It's a mimic.
Well, actually, they did say that was part of the legend, that the rock could change shapes.
Oh.
Algonquin legend, clearly narrated by a guy from the South who didn't know how to say the word Algonquin, because he said it wrong every single time. But he said Algon. I don't know how he said it, but anyway. Said the L wrong. Algonquin or something. I don't know. Anyway.
Okay. So UFOs on the wrong bus. I actually like the assuming that there was more than one bus and that people had to stop to relieve themselves. I actually like that theory. The fact that he was not quite all there and just got on the wrong bus and ended up somewhere else and just kind of faded away. It's kind of sad, but it seems plausible.
I'm going to reverse my theory and go with bus cult again.
Yes. I'm also going to say he never had a wife named Pearl. Somebody made that up. I'm going to label that as legend.
I mean, the conflicting accounts on that one too.
I don't think it's true.
Yeah. Fewer conflicting accounts.
Conflicting bus cults? Is that what you said?
Oh, man. Yeah. I mean, the two rival buses, they each had their own one. But Paul Jepson, the little boy.
You remember those bus cults, Greyhound and Blackhound?
Black Dog.
Never heard of one of those anymore. It's just Greyhound now.
But yeah. Paul. Let's move on to Paul Jepson, the 8-year-old kid.
Poor Paul.
Yeah. Once you brought up the fact that he had run away from home before, that adds a different layer to all this, I think. Because it either suggests he just liked exploring and liked just going off on his own, or something was wrong at home. Which to me, if it's the latter, that lends credence to the fact that maybe his parents really weren't that fond of him and killed him and fed him to the pigs.
Is that what you're
Some
going
peop-
with? The kill them or fed them to the pigs theory?
I mean, the pigs they'll eat bones. They'll just like chomp them down and swallow them up. It's
Okay, Joe Exotic. Let's keep going here.
I mean, it's that, or he decided to wander off again, whether he was running away or just exploring, and someone kidnapped him on the highway. Because that is where the scent went cold.
Yeah, I got to go abduction on this one. This seems
Yeah.
like that's what happened to this little kid. It was a bus that went by, and he's like, "Hey, I'll hop on this bus."
I'll just sit on this rock.
Little did he know.
in this bus.
We should also point out here and pause for a second that we floated serial killer as a possible theory earlier, but even child abduction, like, I know it can happen anywhere, but this is like literally nowhere. So, like, for there to be a serial killer in this area is like, I mean, that was a bored ass serial killer for a lot of the time. Should point out that there's of this little triangle, there are 2 ghost towns whose 2020 census data said one had 6 residents and one had 9 residents in the entire city. So we're not talking metropolises here. I mean, Bennington itself is larger, but seems like a weird place for either abduction or serial killings to take place.
That's true. That is very true. But in this case, I do think abduction does seem to be the most plausible explanation. A little kid wandering around by himself, he ends up near the highway. Someone passing through, terrible human being, sees an opportunity and yoink. I mean, it's possible. It's still unlikely, but it does seem like the most plausible explanation, or the pig food thing.
Is yoink the actual sound effect that is made when kids are abducted?
I wouldn't know. I've never been abducted or done any abducting.
Hey kid, yoink.
No
way, mister. You're a kidnapper. Hang it all. Supposed to say the yoink in a minute.
These are terrible discussions.
They really are. We've got senile old man takes a wrong bus and wanders off to die in the woods. We have little kid gets yoinked, I think is the official description for that one.
As long as it's yoinked and not blinked, we're okay.
Woo! We're cutting that, right?
Nope.
No.
That's staying until Joe does the Lincoln Park podcast. All right.
All right. So what horrible things can we say about poor Frida Langer, who did show up?
Frida Langer, what'd you do?
Yeah, the one body of the main 5 that was that actually reappeared later on.
This one's kind of weird too. I mean,
yeah.
It says she and several other family members. I have camping on mine. You said hunting on yours.
Well, they were
camp hunting,
and she and her cousin went off to hunt, I believe, is how that went.
To me, this one's weird because I want to know how many people she was with at that moment in the woods, because I don't know, if it was just me and one other person, I would imagine that person would just walk back with me while I usually got changed.
Yeah, unless he was like really impatient or just kind of a jerk, in which case, why would you go hunting with him in the first place? But yeah.
It seems
it is like perhaps the weirdest part of the story is that he just is like, yeah, cool, I'll just hang out here. You go go change your clothes. Like,
yeah,
I'll just come back with you. It's cool.
Yeah,
that is a good point. Because I mean, at that point, you're delayed anyway, so you might as well make sure your family member gets back safely.
Mm-hmm.
Or heck, maybe swing back, pick up a bottle of water or a beer or something, just to keep yourself fresh for the trip. Something, just don't just hang out in the woods like a creep.
Apparently, I did not put a solution down on my notes for this one, so I got to think about this for a minute now. This is weird just because if again, we're going off scattered notes of 60, 70 years here, but if they really did a very thorough job of searching, and that's a big if, and then found that body back where they had already searched, like, I don't even know what that would mean. Would that mean they're terrible searchers? I guess I didn't even think about that. Probably is probably the easiest answer.
Yeah.
But I was thinking like, but she was out in the woods with, I don't know. This is weird. My first thought on this one was someone had killed this person
Mm.
and then like threw the body in their car or something. They did the big search, and then I was thinking like, what a great spot to like hide a body is a place that's already been thoroughly searched. Bring it back out there and throw it back out there,
Mm-hmm.
And then it's
Yeah.
like, oh, we must have missed this person when we were searching. So I don't know. What else could this one be?
Well, we mentioned difficult terrain or like, unsteady terrain. Maybe stepped on a loose rock, took a tumble into, someplace where she was badly hurt or knocked out or something. But then again, when she woke up, if she was still alive, you think she'd just go back to the camp, or they would have found her at a ravine. So I don't know. This one actually is one of the most perplexing. Because if she had just vanished without a trace, yeah, we could go on the whole, hit her head on a rock, animal dragged her off, thing that we've talked about before. But the fact that she reappeared seemingly intact. I mean, she was in bad shape. Her body had decomposed and stuff, but I didn't see anything about like limbs missing, like an animal would have, been at her and,
Yeah.
carried off bits and pieces or anything. But yeah, the fact that she was seemingly mostly intact, in a clearing where she had to have been put deliberately by something, because I don't know, that this one is bizarre to me, and really the one that I don't have a solid explanation for.
What do you think of Brett?
This is one that it. I guess it's like less weird than the other ones. It doesn't have like other than the fact that she was supposed to go back to camp and like never turned up. It like the rest of them have like more like oddities, it seems like, and this one's just like, I mean, other than she just disappeared. Really, that's the biggest oddity, is she just up and disappeared supposedly. Um, I don't. I haven't seen anything about like the cousin that she went hiking or hunting with, if he was any kind of like suspect at all. But I mean, he would, to me it seems like he would be a suspect to me.
The last person who saw her, yeah.
Yeah, and have a story like, oh yeah, I'll just wait here while you go back and never get found again. It I don't know, because she doesn't, there wasn't any like weird like stories about her like having any kind of things going on with her life that were odd or anything. It's just like it just disappeared and then reappeared in a place that had been searched. So
Yeah.
I probably would lean towards something less paranormal, but I don't have an answer, like a clear answer.
They found a bus ticket in her hand. No, I was just thinking too, one of the last couple theories for some of these that we haven't mentioned yet is this is a place around the mountain, I guess, and in this triangle area is kind of really known for like extreme wind and weather shifts, they said, which is like really dizzying, and which is weird to me because I don't know. I've spent a fair amount of time in the woods, and like I'm not sure how wind patterns can make it confusing because it doesn't like move the trees or anything, but
Yeah.
but they said that, so there's always a possibility. I guess there's some kind of weird phenomenon with that where like maybe she was trying to run back to the camp and just never got back to the camp. And
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
Somehow went the wrong direction.
yeah, I mean, and then it could be like any number of things where we could combine even some of these, like where, maybe she tripped and fell and died or something, and then maybe a mountain lion did get her body and dragged it out to that clearing later on. I mean, it was chewing on her or something. I mean, you could, unless somebody put her there. I guess that's kind of the hinge on this one for me is, was she not in that area when they looked for her, or did they just miss her when they were looking for her? Because if she wasn't there, then probably serial killer type person
Yeah,
or something really paranormal, or they just missed her. And then anything
yeah.
could have happened to her body at that point.
And the area was described as a clearing, and it seems like it would be really hard to miss a body lying in a clearing.
Yeah.
If it was deep woods, sure. If it was like rocky, mountainous, area with a lot of, obstructions, sure. Clearing, I don't know. It seems like if she was there, they should have seen her. Not saying it's impossible that they didn't, but I don't know that it seems like you'd have to be really bad at your job if you missed a body in plain sight like that.
Yeah, I don't
But
know on
yeah,
this
I
one.
yeah, I don't really have a solid explanation. And that's the first one of these I've really been able to say that for.
Kind of fun though. The last one we're not sure.
Yeah, I like that actually.
I like some of the terminology they use here too. Um, for the first dude, Midi Rivers
Mhm.
was leading the party of hunters in an area known as Hell Hollow.
Saw like one mention of that, and I didn't know if it was, legitimate. So I
And
didn't. Yeah.
and I kid you not, I was just actually back on Google Maps tracing along the Long Trail, and they have a campground where you can rent out little cabins called Kid Gore Shelter.
I saw that as well.
And I was like,
That's
Oh, and
weird.
on that note, I should mention that this at least in passing, this is mentioned on the official Vermont tourism website, like the triangle, the Long Trail at least, and I think there's mention of the Bennington Triangle and some of the legends behind it. So, um,
Come see the legend in action.
yeah, which does kind of okay. This has been something that's kind of been sticking in the back of my head since I really did the bulk of my research on this, and it's that I really don't know why this place is known well enough to have a name for this triangular area, because nothing's happened there in 70 years. I mean, it's a 5-year stretch where 5, 6 people went missing, and okay, it's 200, or excuse me, 26,000 acres of forest. I'm surprised more people haven't gone missing in the time since. Yes, it's not terribly populated, but you got a 260-mile long trail, 267-mile long trail where it is at least popular enough to be on Vermont's tourism website. You'd think more people, if there was anything going on here, more people would have disappeared since then. Uh, Maybe it's just me, but it feels like there objectively have been not a whole lot of strange things that have happened, and the ones that did happened either in the long past or in this really narrow block of time. So the whole, like, the fact that there is so much out there, citing these cases and whatnot, is weird to me, because as we've said, in going over some of these, even the better known ones, there's not a whole lot of solid information, but on all but one of them, we've been able to come up with plausible explanations for how these people may have gone missing. And let's face it, people disappear in national parks, in the woods, all the time. And these cases, for the most part, once you dig a little bit and find elements that explain more than what's on the surface, they don't seem all that remarkable to me, at least. Ancient, Native American legends aside about strange winds and rocks that eat people, and and curses where you only want to bury your dead there and you don't go there if you're alive. I I don't know. The actual things that have happened don't seem that bizarre to me. The stagecoach getting tipped over aside. But maybe that's just me. I honestly, it was interesting learning about all this, because true crime and that sort of stuff always is.
yeah.
But in terms of like a paranormal site, I don't know. But what do you guys think? I personally don't feel like there's a whole lot to this.
Well, I mean, in terms of supernatural, you're saying, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Hmm.
it's a little, I don't know. I do agree that people go missing and get lost very often, but this is just, like I mentioned earlier, such a unique what do I want to say here, collective of cases, because they're just so similar but so different from each other. Like it's weird. Like on the on the face value, it's 5 people that go missing in the main part of the story, but yet each one had its own little thing to it. Like this one, a body was found. This one, they disappeared when there was people around. This one, they disappeared at a crossroads. This one's on a bus. It doesn't seem to be a lot of supernatural stuff. I agree with you there. I mean, you could maybe argue for, like, if you wanted to go into like the Bigfoot type stuff or the Wendigo or whatever.
Mhm.
The mountain lion, I guess, could conceivably be one or two of these, if that's the case, and they're as strong as I'm reading that they are. It's just hard to say, because each of these people could have had their own motivation for what took them out on that day to go on that hike, and it may, in some cases, have not been to go back home ever again when they went out, or maybe they had a schizophrenic breakdown, or who knows, who knows what the real details of some of these people are. They, maybe that guy thought he was on the same bus, or maybe the girl did get a new life in a different city and had no recollection of her old life when she got there. Like, we know the bare minimum about most of these people. Though we did have, a couple little clips. It does make me curious on that newspaper.com website, if people were able to find those couple of clips on Tedford, if there are other clips out there about some of these other people, maybe. But then it also begs the question of, like, why are those things not more widespread online either? So I don't know. It's an interesting little hub. I mean, it's in the middle of nowhere, but the fact that there were that many things in a community that's that small, I guess at the same time, is kind of interesting.
I'd like to propose an overarching theory to this, in that there was a man interviewed in that episode of Weird or What that Shatner was the host of. This man, who does not have a degree, to my knowledge, said, and I quote, "It's quite possible that there was a rogue Sasquatch, probably a male, who was operating outside of the normal range of Sasquatch behavior."
That's right.
He then pointed towards the story of Albert Ostman, who you may know that name because that story's been around for a long time. But he was a Canadian prospector who reported being abducted by a Bigfoot in 1924. He was supposedly held captive for 6 days by a family of 4 Sasquatch, a mother, father, and 2 children. The family of Big Feet fed him, and he stated that the mother would spend her time collecting and washing leaves.
Everyone's got to have a hobby.
Osman finally escaped after feeding Squatch Daddy some of his snuff, which made the creature groggy and unable to catch him. So, what if all of these people were abducted? Not necessarily abducted. How about adopted? They've all been adopted by Squatch families looking for new people to give their love to, and they now all live in the underground Squatch civilization.
Interesting.
Thoughts?
Let's see.
It's entertaining.
Didn't work for Herrick because he must have said the wrong thing, so he's out.
That's right. He got voted out.
Rivers could have been, I guess.
I mean, maybe,
Weldon could have been, I guess. Yeah.
The Squatch babies. Yeah.
Tedford, who knows on that one? So maybe.
Yeah. They realized he was sad and, needed a new family since his wife left him.
Jepson absolutely could fit that profile. Langer, I mean, something happened with her, I guess. She died when she was with the family, and they're like, "Oh shit!" So they just threw the body back out in the field.
She was like this when we found her.
Oh boy, that's funny.
I mean, it isn't the craziest theory that's out there. I mean, people slipping through dimensions, or being spirited away, or the wormhole thing, or on a moving bus.
Somehow. I so wanted the bus to just be that he actually disappeared, though. That would
was
fantastic.
the case that caught my attention the most initially, and then then I found that one account about, oh, hey, by the way, it was a week later that they started asking around. And it's like, god damn it. Because just once I'd like to find one of these that's legitimately from top to bottom mysterious and inexplicable. And that had to ruin it. But I mean, I will say I had a lot of fun researching this because it was something I hadn't heard about until you'd brought it up. And yeah, it was an interesting rabbit hole to go down, I'll say. Because holy crap, there's a lot out there, and most of it is not recent. Like, I was going through the Wayback Machine, finding like pages that were only half loading, digging through the archives of like 20-year-old paranormal magazines that were just still up, and not in print anymore. There was a lot of really weird trails you can go down with this case, and the fact that it is so well known or at least so pervasive out there, is kind of neat in a way.
Yeah, I randomly was doing a puzzle book that I got for Christmas like 2 years ago, I think, and it's just like what did it come up in? I don't even remember. I don't remember if it was like a anagram thing, or maybe a code breaking thing, or like a word search or something. It's talking about the Bennington Triangle. I was like, I don't even know what that is.
Neat.
But yeah.
Do you guys, we touched on this a little bit, but do you have any ideas as to the fact that basically all of these happened either in October, November, or December? Does that have any thoughts for you guys? For me personally, if I'm having honest theories, I have no idea what that's about, but it's doesn't seem like coincidence. I mean, I don't know. It's super, super weird.
Well,
it could lead a little credence to the like weather theories, I guess, because that's probably
that's the time of the year you would go out in the woods.
Well, no, but like maybe the weather would have more like spastic weather changes at that time of the year, like pre-winter, late fall, wet, yucky.
Yeah, I don't know like how your average winter in Vermont is. So I don't know if they're like if they tend to be harsh or like cold, or there's a ton of snow, or if it's variable. But maybe it's volatile, and weather conditions could have played a part in some of this. Like, I don't, aside from the whole bus thing, being delayed by snow, I don't think I saw anything mentioned about the weather conditions at the time. At least nothing concrete. So aside from, and I think it was cold when Paula headed out, but
right,
I don't know if it was snowy. I don't know if it was clear or cloudy, or so maybe weather is a factor.
I mean, you would.
It's not.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, I was going to say, and maybe the rest of the year it's not as volatile, and people are less likely to get led astray or wander off or go missing, just because they have a better time of getting around. I don't know. I'm speculating here.
You would assume that more people would be hiking in the summer. So
True.
If you just want to go purely off the odds of people being kidnapped and or murdered while they're hiking, you would think there'd be more cases from the summertime, but I don't know.
I mean, maybe it was a serial killer with no real preference other than targeting people when the trails are less occupied. It's a possibility. I don't know.
Yeah, that seems possible.
Yeah, but again, this is all just shots in the dark. I mean, we've run the gamut in these cases for everything from like potential Bigfoot footprints to killer rocks, to wormholes, to serial killers, to carnivorous pigs. I mean, yeah. Yeah, so I mean, there's no shortage of speculation out there about all this, and in a way, that's part of the allure, I think. I personally think a lot of these do have mundane explanations, but being able to speculate and kind of toss these ideas back and forth it's an interesting thought experiment. And I really do. That is one of the things I like most about these kinds of episodes. Just spitballing these ideas, bouncing them back and forth, seeing, what might actually be an explanation versus just how crazy and bonkers we can get with what might be going on. So
Yeah. It's pretty
these
boring
are
if there's an obvious answer.
yeah. But yeah. So on that note, any further thoughts on this, or are we about ready to wrap this one?
Yeah, I was trying to think of how we could even come up with any way to put any number on anything here today, and I just don't even know how you would do it on this one.
Uh, odds that something paranormal is responsible for any of this, from 0 being it's people or gravity or wild animals that killed everything, or that made all these people disappear, to 10, which is it's a subterranean clan of Bigfoots
Wait a
using
second.
wormholes to
What-
pick people from buses and feed them to man-eating stones.
What is the scale? What if you're like, it was a person? That doesn't fit on the scale. We don't believe it was a person.
In fact, there are no people in the Bennington Triangle. They're all holograms projected by the
Heyo.
Bigfoots to lure people in to join their clan.
Interesting.
So,
I mean, this seems like a pretty low. I mean, I'm going to give it like a 3 just because, this, if I'm reading your scale correctly, could be, or I think it'd be fun if it was Bigfoot or a Manitou, Wendigo creature, or some kind of weird energy balls that are drawing people off their trail to chase into the woods. Or the fun rock. I feel like we didn't get enough of that rock, boy.
the rock is distinctive. I mean, if nothing else,
That's
I will
fun.
never forget that rock.
It's a fun one.
Yeah. So 3 out of 10, you said?
3 out of 10 that there's a chance this was something paranormal.
Okay. What about you, Brett?
Man, I mean, I had a lot of fun thoughts on this one. I'm going to give an honest answer for this though. I don't. There's a lot of weirdness, but I think maybe if I was to put like some sort of kind of overarching answer to all this stuff, the possibility that there's something weird geologically about this area, which, I mean, that theory falls apart because why would it happen in a small period of time and is not continuing now? But let's just continue on to this thought here that there's something disorienting about this area, and that at the wrong point in time, you can just kind of like something just like in your mind, just, whatever triggers, and you just don't know what, you're disoriented, you're like out of it, and you just go off. Like the one guy said, he just get called by the mountain and you're just, off into the wilderness. I don't know. I mean, that's actually, that would actually be less of a paranormal thing and more of a, I don't know, just a natural occurrence kind of thing, I suppose, is where I'm going with this overall thought. There's almost no evidence that really people were involved with these necessarily. There's just like, I don't know. So I probably would go with like, I mean, 3, like Cody said, 3 feels awful honest to me.
Okay.
Yeah, let's go with that, because there's just too much weirdness. You can't just explain things, even though we came up with possible explanations. So there's got to be a level of weirdness here for me. So 3 is my answer.
Okay. Yeah, the spottiness of the information that's the sticking point with me, where we there's so many gaps that we don't know, that we don't have answers to, that we don't have details to, that make this tricky to really pin down. That said, of the major cases involved, I think we've come up with explanations that seem very plausible and very mundane. So for the bulk of them, I would rate this pretty low, like maybe a 1. But then there's the whole thing with Frida Langer, where she reappeared in an area that was searched, in a place where an animal most likely would not have just left her. and so that indicates that someone or something, to me, it seems like she was placed there deliberately. And that's the part that I keep coming back to, the weirdest part, despite being one of the less weird cases on the surface. And that one does elevate things for me. Just so we're not all doing the same number, I'm going to say, thanks to her case, I'm going to rate this as a 4. Because there's so much of that seems, I mean, you're appealing to incredulity if you're just saying that, there's no way they could have missed her when they first swept through. It's possible, but very unlikely. But then again, the search went on for a good while, and I don't know, just the fact that so much time went by. She was there. She wasn't completely picked apart. It's weird to me. There's something that isn't adequately explained. I don't know what the explanation is, but I'm not sure I ever will. And that to me suggests there's something more at work here. Because it doesn't seem like the work of animals. If it was a person that killed her, it's a weird time and place to just dump her. I don't know. This is the weirdest thing to me of all of this. And yeah, that elevates it up to a 4. Something inexplicable dumped her there. And whether you want to say that's Sasquatch, whether you want to say that's like she popped back out of a dimensional rift or a wormhole, whether you want to say that, I don't know, animals decided to just leave her there and not carry off her stuff or her remaining flesh. I don't know. I have no explanation for this. My cat doesn't either. You may have heard her in the background. So yeah, I don't think it's high on the probability that this place is like weirdly haunted and supernatural and whatnot, but something bizarre happened. So a fun rabbit hole. So for you listeners at home, if you're curious about like digging more into this, you shouldn't have much trouble finding at least the stuff that we did. And I think each one of us did bring something new and unique to the table that the others of us missed. So there's a good chance there is other information out there. How valid it is anyone's guess. But if you're curious about any of this, dig a bit. You'll probably have to go through some hoops to find anything concrete, but it's an entertaining jaunt, I would say. And yeah, I did have fun researching this. So if you like this sort of stuff, yeah, see what you can dig up. Perhaps you'll find something we missed.
Yeah.
But so I think that pretty much covers everything. And yeah, I look forward to whatever we do next in this vein, because even if most of the explanations we get are fairly straightforward, it's still fun getting to that point. So hopefully you had as much fun learning about the Bennington Triangle as we did. And yeah, happy hunting if you decide to search for more. So I think that brings us to our song, our ending theme.
Let's do it.
All right. Any particular style you want to do? I don't know what, like,
you tell us.
This is just going to be a mess. Okay, so I guess something in line with maybe the Unsolved Mysteries theme, or like some sort of paranormal show, maybe. Let's just launch into it. So, thanks again for joining us for this kind of clumsy ending to another episode of
Glastonbury, take me home to the place I belong. Southern Vermont, Mountain Mama, take me home.
You said Mountain Mama?
That's the lyrics, yeah.
Oh.
Mountain Mama.
Okay.
I think you're right, yeah.
Oh, Mountain Mama?
Yeah.
Oh, not Mount Mama. My bad.
Well, I mean...
When in Glastonbury. Hey.
Ooh.